about everywhere. So I'm going to limit mine to basically Europe and the Northeast Mediterranean area, which I think many of us are probably a little more interested in. At least most of those we can have a chance of reading. My name's John McIntosh. I've got a store, Ancient Artifacts and Treasures, and it's over on Fairbanks. Been there over 22 and a half years now, so been there a little while. The store is all about history. I have man-made or nature-made, so I've got a lot of Greek, Roman, Egyptian, pre-Columbian, Chinese, Native American artifacts. And then I have minerals, crystals, fossils, and meteorites. In fact, I have a 13-egg dinosaur nest in my store right now. Just all sorts of neat stuff. But I have a lot of coins. I particularly enjoy the ancient coins. I have quite a few medieval coins, but I have a lot of US coins, and I also stock coin supplies, things like that. Okay, why is it called the medieval period? Well, first of all, let's look at what medieval is. Medi means middle. EV means age, so we have Middle Age. And so medieval literally means of the Middle Ages. Well, what are the Middle Ages? Basically, we define the Middle Ages as somewhere between the fall of Rome and the Renaissance. The fall of Rome took place, depending on where you look, around 500. And the Renaissance started, depending on where you look, again, somewhere 1415 to maybe early 1600s. A lot of people put the demarcation, we first started putting what we call the modern dates on coins in the late 1400s. And so people kind of say, okay, well, let's do that as a Renaissance. Some other people look at a few other things than Renaissance, but roughly that time period. I have pictures along the way, by the way. This is Castle Sussex in Great Britain. The medieval period is divided into three: early, middle, or high, and late. That makes a little sense, I think. So when were the medieval times and what happened in there? Well, we have a few interesting things that happened during medieval times. Okay? Really right here, Justinian is crowned the Emperor of Byzantium, or the Byzantine Empire. And that was in about 530. So we kind of say that's very early in the Middle Ages. There are some neat things. William the Conqueror, most of you have heard of William the Conqueror. That was in 1066, right here. And we've got King John of England signing the Magna Carta. And that was another very important. And then let's go to the other way. This is the Black Death. Europe lost a significant portion of its population during the plague and the Black Death and all. And then the Ottoman Turks destroyed the Byzantine Empire. And so right here is 1500 is where some people say that the Renaissance began and the medieval period ended. The early Middle Ages is sometimes called the Dark Ages. And it's kind of Eurocentric. They call it the Dark Ages because we don't really know a lot of what happened there. We're not sure of some of the culture. We don't have a huge amount of writing of what happened. In Europe, it was the Dark Ages. But I'm going to flip a little bit. If we go around the world, some of the other, like the Islamic Empire, was really high. They had a lot of learning. It was flowering during that time. So we call it the Dark Ages in Europe, but that's not necessarily true around the world. The High Medieval period is a period of time that typified what we normally think of as the Middle Ages. That's a time when we had a lot of knights going around. We had the Crusades. We had different things. The Magna Carta, as I mentioned before. I kind of like that because the king at that time was King John, and I'm John. So, okay.
They go together.
They go together. Matter of fact, one of my hobbies is I collect coins with the ruler John, or a variation of that, like Johann or Johannes or Juan or any of those. And I've got quite a collection going all the way back into Roman times with Johannes, the Roman times. I haven't found too many Chinese with the name John yet, though. Some strange. It was also significant change in Europe. Christianity spread throughout Europe, except for Spain. The Moors and the had Spain at that point in time, and it wasn't until a little bit later that Spain actually became fully Christianized, like most of the rest of Europe. Late Middle Ages. Well, this is really when we transformed from what we consider to an old world into a new world. At the end of the late Middle Ages is when we had the Age of Conquest. Spain was traveling the world, Portugal was traveling the world, we had exploration, continents were being discovered, Magellan circumnavigated the world. It was really a time of real big change. Again, the end is debatable. One good reason also is, well, what happened in 1492?
Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Yeah. So that is actually really the start of what we consider to be more modern era, at least in the Western Hemisphere. Okay, why was the medieval period important? Well, a lot of reasons. The world changed from really ancient cultures, transforming into more modern cultures. For example, the universities and colleges were started. Heidelberg University in Germany. There were a lot of universities that were really transforming what we knew and how we could learn, which is really important. They also had rule of law. They had changed in the religious arena. The papal, all of the papacy has become very important during that time. And the birth of tourism. We think we have a lock on it here in Central Florida. And people were starting to travel. That can be seen, for example, by the 1400s when Marco Polo took off and went over to China. People were traveling, seeing places. They were having a lot of traveling around the world, traveling to especially Jerusalem, and some of those places were becoming extremely popular. The contribution of the medieval period, especially in architecture and art. This is Cologne Cathedral, and it's in northern Germany. Beautiful cathedral. I don't know if any of you have been there. Anybody been there? It's a beautiful cathedral. I had, when was it? Back in the early 70s, I had the opportunity to actually sing in Cologne Cathedral.
Wow.
And the acoustics in there were just absolutely fabulous. The stained glass windows, the naves, the architecture, the flying buttresses on the outside, absolutely fabulous.
Tallest building in the world before the Washington Monument.
That's right. And another bit of information about Cologne Cathedral is that it's almost an exact copy of Notre Dame, except, as we know French do, they didn't finish it. They never put up the spires the way they did the Cologne Cathedral. Leave it to the French to not finish things. Timeline of some interesting inventions. Well, one of the most important inventions that we had was obviously golf. That one was invented around 1400.
Wow.
But actually the more important was the printing press, which was actually invented in 1440. That one literally changed the world and really propelled us into the Renaissance. They also had parachutes and an all-important whiskey. Whiskey was invented in 1494. They also had different types of rifles, and they had a map of the globe that was
Flatter.
actually fairly accurate. Before that, things were not necessarily to scale or fairly accurate. And we started to have in the late 1400s a lot more accurate maps. Okay, what did medieval society use for money? Well, think about it. They didn't have any checks. They didn't have any credit cards. And they didn't have any paper money. So everything that they did was coins. And those coins were gold, silver, and bronze. And a lot of times, only one or two of those, depending upon what stretch of time or country, were available. Here's some medieval coins. These are mostly from the 12 and 1300s. You'll notice a few things on them that I'll talk about in a minute, but you notice the crosses on one side. You notice the figure on the other side. Maybe not an accurate portrayal of the king, but there anyway. Okay, medieval coins. They started out almost as a follow-on to the Roman denarius. The Roman denarius was a silver coin. And in Europe, what they did is they became very popular. So follow-on to it, they started making a silver denarius, and I'll talk a moment about, you see at the bottom the things that they were called. But they started at 240th part of 1 fund. It was about 400 grams. So if you divide that by 240, you get about how many grams were in the denarius at the time. In Europe, they were called pfennigs. England was penny, France was denier, Italy denaro. You can see where the denarius still continues on. Medieval rulers. Well, like any country, medieval times, the rulers like to put their portraits and their names on the coins. So we actually have a lot of coins that we can get some very good history from. We can get names, we can get the reign, in other words, who followed who, so we can get a kind of timeline and match that up with other information. One of the very early rulers to start putting his picture on coins was Charlemagne. In some regard, people consider him to be one of the earliest rulers in the Middle Ages. He basically put most of Europe together and started what we now call, I think they call it then, the Carolingian Empire. And he ruled for a long time. He started making coins right around 800. And this coin right here is a silver penny of Charlemagne, and it's after 1794, but probably right around 1800, that coin there.
Right before the mud.
It's a beautiful coin. Unfortunately, I don't own one, so I couldn't bring you an example. I brought a number of medieval coins and you come up afterwards, but I do have one of his successors just very shortly after his reign. In the 12th, 13th century, Germany minted coins, and they were again based loosely on the denarius, but they had an interesting twist to theirs. Most of theirs were one-sided. They had an image on one side, and the other side was basically blank. So when they struck it, what you would see is a reverse image of what was on the front of that coin. Some of the designs were really nice. I brought a couple of them, I think, with me. I know I brought one nice one. You can see that. This is what they call the bishop order. During that time, I'll mention this in a little while, but churches and bishops, they had bishopric, anyway, and they had a large area that they ruled, and so they made their own coins, depending upon who was the major rulers in the area. Okay, come on. Great Britain. And Great Britain also made coins during this time. They had the pound, shilling, and pence. Most of us have probably heard of that. If you're a coin collector, I hope you have probably seen many of these coins. They actually started with the gold noble, the quarter noble, the silver groat, the silver penny. Now the silver penny is based on the denarius. The groat was actually, I think I say this later, the groat actually means big penny. And so it was larger than the penny. And of course they got into the gold coins. For most of the period they didn't have bronze coins. They started out fairly early. If you go back into the 900s, 800s, they had a number of bronze coins. But they had mostly silver coins during that time and up through, well, basically up through probably 1800s.
Butterfly.
These are coins of Richard II, and he ruled 1367 to 1400. And the two top, you've got the gold noble at the top, the quarter noble, and then you have the groat and the groat and the silver penny.
Huh.
Okay, this is also for Britain. This is a very early one. This was a gold bancus of Ola, and he ruled around 760. We don't know for sure his exact ruling dates, but we do know him from his coins. And that is an absolute gorgeous coin. Again, I don't have it, but I have seen one in real life, and it's just beautiful. That coin was about a month's wages for a skilled worker, not a laborer, a skilled worker. So that was about a month's wages. During this time, I mentioned a lot of people think that the Byzantine emperor, who the first one was Anastasius, then Justinian, but they think that the Byzantine Empire started about the same time as the Middle Ages and actually ended about the same time that we think the Middle Ages ended medieval times. So they had, they were the eastern wing of the Roman era, the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, when it fell, the Byzantine Empire still continued on, and they did not fall to 1453. So here we have a couple of coins, and I actually brought two of these coins with me. The gold, I don't think mine's Justinian, but I have a gold coin, and I also have a Pholus, which has the M on the back. Now this one doesn't, it has a cross. One interesting thing about the Byzantine coins during this time, every single one had a cross on it somewhere. So if you see a Byzantine coin, look for the cross on it. You'll find the cross somewhere on the coin. Around 1000 AD or so, they actually started putting Christ's image, or their vision of what Christ looked like, on their coins. And these are the emperors, but I do have, one of the coins I brought with me has the image of Christ on it also. Okay, most common coin was a silver fennick, depending upon what country you were actually in. And they had, most of them you'll notice here, there's a cross on one side. And a lot of them had either a castle or the emperor on the other side. That was very common, especially in the 1300s, to have one or the other. This particular one is one of the Crusaders. This is the Kingdom of Jerusalem, Baldwin III. This dates 1143 to 1163. And I actually brought one of his coins with me.
Oh, damn.
Okay. Now, I mentioned here ruler castle. Later, the rulers started putting a coat of arms. This one is Ferdinand and Isabella. Anybody ever hear of those two characters?
Yep.
Let's get back to 1492, right? This is one from 1474 to 1504. It's a 1 real. It is silver. And you notice that they have placed their coat of arms on the coin. And I brought one also of Ferdinand and Isabella with me. The popes during this time had an on and off issue with coins. Depending upon who were the main rulers, like the Holy Roman Empire and such, sometimes they were allowed to make coins, sometimes they were not allowed to make coins. But they started making coins really in the late 700s. There was a time period after that where, for a couple hundred years, they did not make any coins. But then they started making coins off and on, and all the way out to, well, the last one that we talk about, again, until we get to the Renaissance, is 1477. That's Eugenius IV. They did continue to make papal coins, and they are still making papal coins today. Okay, during that same time period, especially starting in the 1200s and such, the city of Venice, Italy, became a major hub of trade. Now, normally when you're a major hub of trade, you busy. Pardon?
Oh, who's, it's,
Normally when you are the major
Keep going.
hub of trade, you kind of become a very wealthy city. Venice did, and consequently, they started making coins fairly
oh my
early.
God.
They actually started making coins in the 900, around 1000. This one is considered one of the earliest coins of the city of Venice in medieval times. This is Enrico Dandolo. I actually brought a coin of his grandson. Now I can't think of his first name, but he's a Dandolo also. I brought one of those coins for you to look at, if you'd like. They had, these were Ducati, they were made in silver and in gold. This particular one is Grosso, so that was silver. The one I brought is also silver. They had the Doge, which was the head of the church in that area during that time. And the Doge was receiving the standard from St. Mark, which was the patron saint of the city of Venice. If you've ever been there, you've probably been to Mark Square, which is the St. Mark Square. The other side here had sometimes Christ and sometimes another ruler, depending upon what it was.
Looks like an alien.
Sometimes, as later on, they started having a symbol with 9 stars. And I'm not sure what the 9 stars stood for. I meant to look that up, and I didn't think to do that. Here we go. Here's the image with the 9 stars. And I don't know what the 9 stars mean. This was one of the last coins, the last Doge of Venice in 1796, in Ludovico Manin. And that was a gold coin also. Questions?
Oh my God.